Good afternoon. At this time, I'd like to call our Suffolk City Council work session to order. And our first item is a 2024-2025 operating and capital budget overview. Mr. Manager.
Yes, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, at your seat is a copy of the proposed fiscal year 2024-2025 operating and capital budget. The proposed budget priorities focus on maintaining services delivery levels, critical personnel needs, community health and safety, public education, and capital needs while maintaining compliance with the city's financial policies. The FY25 budget totals $882,100,325, which represents a 0.4% increase over the current fiscal budget. The Director of Finance, Charles Meek, will present an overview of the proposed FY 2024-2025 operating and capital budget. Mr. Meek.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. I'm pleased to present you the fiscal year 2024-2025 operating and capital budget. I'll start off by saying while any budget never addresses all the funding requests and needs that are out there, I think you will find that this budget moves the city forward, addresses critical operational needs and demand for services, and remains true to our financial principles that have allowed Suffolk to maintain our AAA bond rating. Before I go any further, I need to take a moment to thank some folks who've played an instrumental role in getting us to this point here. Budget division staff has spent countless hours crunching numbers, mining data, and tying together the package that's in front of you now. So I want to thank them. Also want to thank the city departments who sat in on numerous meetings, answered questions, and responded to requests for follow-up information. With that, our budget priorities in the fiscal year 25 proposed budget are to maintain service levels in our growing city with no tax rate increase, address our critical personnel needs and employee compensation, community health and safety, public education, quality of life through capital improvements, and financial compliance to maintain our AAA status. The proposed real estate rate remains unchanged at $1.09 citywide, 10.5 cents in the downtown business overlay taxing district, and 24 cents in the Route 17 taxing district. This will maintain Suffolk's position as the third lowest real estate tax rate in the region. The proposed budget, as part of the proposed budget, there are 44 new full-time positions recommended to address city growth and service demand. We had 76 positions across all funds and departments that were requested. We're recommending 44, 38 in the general fund, and 6 in our enterprise and internal service funds. Over half of these positions you will see are recommended in public safety departments, with 8 in fire and rescue, 7 in police operations, 6 in police emergency communications, and 1 in the sheriff's department. Other departments will be recommended for increased staffing, 3 in planning and community development to enhance zoning administration efforts, 2 in social services, 2 in the animal shelter, 1 in the Commonwealth Attorney, 1 in the Commissioner of Revenue's office, 1 in the Communications Department, Parks and Recreation 1, Finance 1, Purchasing 1, Economic Development, Tourism, and the City Manager's Office 1. And then there's a net zero position in the Human Resources Department, moving a couple positions out of Human Resources into Risk Management, and then moving a few positions into HR. The other funds 2 in information technology, and this is to bring or try to bring in-house project management and a systems analyst. We're using a lot of outside consultants, and so hopefully this will cut down on some of those costly outside consulting contracts. A programmer analyst in the Public Utilities Fund. This would address pump station controls, again, addressing outside consultants to the extent we can. And then mosquito control technician in stormwater, fleet management would be a part specialist, or a fleet support associate, excuse me. And then in risk management, net 1 new position, which is a risk management specialist. As you can see in the chart on the lower right-hand side, if you look at our total positions that are budgeted compared to 1,000 citizens, we remain relatively the same as we were in FY15, increasing from 15 to 15.6. We want to remain competitive in the region to attract and retain employees. So this budget is recommending a 4% cost of living adjustment for full-time, part-time, and grant employees, a 1-step increase for sworn police personnel, step plan adjustments for qualified employees who meet their service milestones throughout the year, market adjustments, regrades, and reclassifications for positions that have been determined to be below market or with significant changes in job duties. Constitutional officers, the registrar, council appointees, deputy city managers, the deputy city attorney, and department directors will receive or are recommended to receive market adjustments in lieu of the COLA. Moving to community health and safety, we're recommending increased staffing, again, in police, fire and rescue, sheriff, and emergency communications to bolster community safety. We're recommending additional investments with local service partners that provide services to citizens with critical needs that the city would not otherwise be able to provide. A $274,000 increase to organizations such as the Western Tidewater Community Services Board, Suffolk Health Department, Western Tidewater Free Clinic, the Geneve Shelter and 4 Kids, the Food Bank of Southeastern Virginia, the Virginia Legal Aid Society, and 2 new organizations, Suffolk Christian Fellowship Center and Meals on Wheels of Suffolk, Isle of Wight. Now, this is not an exhaustive list of all the local organizations that will receive funding. These are those that fall within the community health and safety area. We're also proposing funding for emergency shelter operations. As you're aware, the city acquired and is in the process of rehabilitating a former commercial building for a city emergency shelter. We're setting aside funding to operate that shelter when that building comes online. In public education, we're recommending a substantial investment in our school division. $75.3 million is recommended for school operations. This is a $4 million increase over the current year, as well as bringing forward and continue to fund $2 million in additional funds that council approved in October for school safety measures. $28.6 million in capital funding is recommended for the JFK Middle School replacement and Northern Shores Elementary School addition, which is in line with the approved CIP. The city also funds debt service for school projects, and $11.5 million is needed next year for schools-related debt service. This is a $400,000 decrease. However, expect that to ramp back up over the next few years as the JFK Middle School bond funding comes online. $739,702 is provided for leases for the school administration building and operations building leases. That's a $296,000 increase over the current year. Quality of life and capital improvements. At Council's second meeting in February, you adopted the capital improvements plan. All of the projects in the first year of the CIP are recommended for funding in the capital budget, with the exception of the Seaboard Coastline Trail Phase 3A, which was advanced at your last council meeting due to some advancements in state funding. Total investment for next year is $83.5 million, which will provide for enhanced parks and recreation facilities, city buildings and facilities, new and replacement fire apparatus and ambulances, police training facility repairs and upgrades, various road and intersection improvements, the JFK and Northern Shores addition projects, neighborhood improvements, open space and downtown projects, stormwater drainage enhancements, and water and sewer upgrades. The funding to provide for these improvements in capital needs of the city will include $35.2 million in bonds and a literary loan for the general government capital projects, including schools, $26.7 million in general fund cash for capital projects. Now, when we came to you with the CIP, we were projecting that we would use $11.9 million drawn from the capital reserve fund. But due to revenue growth, we were able to drop this back to $7.3 million because we're able to use general fund revenue cash increases to pay for the difference. We're also recommending $8 million in capital contingency, and this is to safeguard ongoing major projects against continued rising costs of construction and equipment, materials and supplies. We have the library project getting underway. The College Drive Fire Station is taking shape. And then we have several road improvement projects across the city, and the construction environment is still fairly uncertain and volatile. So in order to keep those projects moving forward, depending on bids and contract prices, we're recommending we put some money towards capital contingency. $8.1 million in state and federal funds are programmed for capital improvement projects next year. The utility fund water and sewer projects will be funded with all utility fund cash at $7.5 million next year. And then stormwater drainage projects, proposing $4.9 million in stormwater revenue bond issuance and $1 million in stormwater fee revenue for drainage projects. We're in compliance with all of our financial policies to help us maintain our AAA status. Our capital pay-go policy requires a minimum of 3% of general government budget towards capital projects. The proposed budget is at 11.5%. Debt as a percentage of assessed value, we need to maintain that at below 4%. The proposed budget is at 1.4%. Debt as a percentage of general government expenditures needs to be maintained at or below 10%. This budget is at 6.2%. The unassigned fund balance remains at 20%. The budget stabilization fund, we are hitting the max at 2.5%, and then the capital reserve fund, we're projecting will increase to $50.9 million from $47.8 million, despite the draw of the $7.3 million, and that's due to the projected surplus revenue in the current fiscal year. The overall budget, as the city manager stated, across all 17 funds is $882,100,325. That's a less than a 0.5% increase over the current year. The reason for that is the capital projects fund and the public utilities fund budgets have decreased due to capital project expenses dropping. You'll see 0 there for the law library fund, and that's due to the law library being temporarily closed for ongoing courthouse renovations. Looking at general fund revenue, is projected at $324,213,302 next year. That's a $28.9 million or 9.8% increase. $7.3 million of that is from the capital reserve fund draw. So the actual revenue growth is $21.3 million. Looking at specific revenue sources in the general fund, our general property taxes are projected to increase 8% or $15.8 million. Leading the way there is real estate at $11.4 million. At your second meeting in February, the assessor gave a report indicating that overall assessed values in the city are increasing by 5.41%, with reassessment comprising 2.86% of that increase and new construction at 2.55%. Since the reassessment values are increasing more than 1%, that triggers a need for a public hearing for an effective rate increase due to reassessment growth. And on your council agenda this evening is a motion to schedule a public hearing for the effective rate increase due to reassessment at your May 1st meeting. Personal property tax revenue on cars, trucks, business property, and machinery and tools is projected to increase $4 million. Public service corporations, which is taxes on railroad property, telecommunications property, and utility companies property, slight increase at $200,000, and then penalties and interest, the trend is increasing there, and so that's projected to go up about $200,000. Other local taxes, a $2.1 million increase is anticipated, driven by sales taxes at a $1 million increase, meals, business license at a $500,000 each increase, motor vehicles at $200,000, utility taxes and admission taxes $100,000 apiece, bank stock, which is tax on banks, the deposits in the city at $60,000, and then recordation. We're expecting a $400,000 reduction. That's due to the current trends in property transfers. There are less transfers occurring, largely due to the higher interest rate environment we're in right now. Other sources of revenue, permits, privilege fees, and fines and forfeitures, slight reduction there at $20,000 apiece. Use of money and property, which is our interest on investments and interest on bond proceeds, along with rental of city facilities. We're projecting a 85% increase, largely $2 million increase due to the higher interest rates we're earning on cash in the bank and the bond proceeds. Charges for services, $384,000 increase, largely driven by trends in EMS billing revenue. Miscellaneous and recovered costs from other government entities, $258,000 increase, and then state and federal funding primarily for social service programs, just shy of $1 million. Looking at the expenditures by category or service area, again, the budget being balanced, so we have $324.2 million or $28.9 million increase in expenditures to match revenue. The increases here are largely driven in the areas of public safety at $9.6 million, education at almost $6.3 million, and then non-departmental at 5.4, and this is a reflection of increased transfer to capital projects and debt service. Looking at our local funding, tax dollar for city services, based on the proposed budget, 30 cents is going towards public safety needs, 27 cents to education and related debt, 7 cents for capital pay-go, 7 cents for debt service, 6 cents apiece for health and welfare and parks, recreation, and cultural services, general government at 5 cents, judicial, community development at 4 cents, public works at 2 cents, non-departmental and local and regional organizations at 1 cent apiece. Looking at the object level expenditures for the general fund, the increase here is mainly driven by personnel and benefits at $10.7 million. That is due to the 38 new positions that are recommended, the 4% cost of living adjustment, the one-step increase for sworn police personnel, step plan adjustments, market adjustments, regates, and reclassifications. And then we're also in a VRS rate adjustment year. Every 2 years, the Virginia Retirement Service adjusts its rates based on their actuarial assumptions and calculations, and that rate and calculation is increasing next year, and so that is also part of the expense here. Schools funding, again, $6.3 million increase, including the leases. Transfer to capital projects compared to last year, $5 million. Internal service expenses, so this is charges to the general fund departments for information technology, fleet, and risk, which is health insurance. $3.8 million increase. In IT, that's mainly driven by maintenance contracts, which are increasing about $1 million. A lot of that is due to increases in public safety technology, the maintenance on those items, our radio systems, and we had a network upgrade as well. Fleet, it's mainly driven by increases in parts and supplies and our vehicle expenses. And then risk, we're projecting, our consultants are projecting a 6% increase in health insurance premiums next year. Department operating expenses, $2.3 million increase. A lot of this, again, is professional services and maintenance contracts. Our juvenile detention contracts are projected to increase almost $500,000 due to the switching of facilities from Chesapeake into other areas. We have Parks and Recreation Master Plan, increased funding for demolition, as well as things for like bulletproof vests for the Sheriff's Department, getting those replaced, new library books, and additional funding for special events. And then debt service is increasing $800,000 in the general fund next year. Looking at some of the other funds, refuse, we are recommending to maintain current service levels for trash pickup, and recycling. No rate adjustment, continuing at $25.25 per month refuse fee, despite increasing costs for recycling and the need to replace aging trash trucks. We're proposing to use $2.4 billion from the refuse fund balance. $2 million of that is to replace 5 refuse trucks, and $400,000 to stabilize the rate so we can keep it at the current level. In the stormwater fund, there's no rate adjustment there. The stormwater fee per ERU is recommended to stay at $7.50 per month. There's an $800,000 increase in debt service, and that's due to us issuing debt for stormwater drainage projects for a 3rd consecutive year. In the Public Utilities Fund, we're not projecting an increase in ERUs next year, expecting that to remain at 550. The bulk water contracts that the city has with the City of Norfolk and Portsmouth are increasing $441,000. Portsmouth is increasing its rate 6%, and our contract with Norfolk provides for a consumer price index increase. 1 new position is recommended in the Public Utilities Fund, a programmer analyst for pump station controls. And so overall, this will require a modest increase in water and sewer rates next year. The average customer will see an increase of about $2.95 per month, or 2.8% in the combined water and sewer bill. And this does not include any increases that the Hampton Roads Sanitation District may pass on or approve this year. In summary, there's no increase to the real estate tax rate. Remains recommended at $1.09 per hundred. We have recommended additional personnel resources to assist with increasing service demand and workload. We have addressed employee compensation to keep the city competitive within the region. We've increased funding for community health and safety needs. Significant funding is recommended for school operations and capital projects. Substantial $83.5 million investment in capital projects across the city to improve quality of life for our Suffolk residents. No changes to refuse and stormwater fees, despite our increasing service demands and equipment needs. A modest increase to water and sewer rates to maintain safe drinking water and sanitary sewer collection. In compliance with all adopted financial policies needed to maintain our AAA status. The next steps on your agenda tonight, there are 2 motions. One is to schedule a public hearing at City Council's April 17th meeting on the proposed operating budget to receive public comment. And then a motion to schedule a public hearing on May 1st to receive public comment on the effective rate increase due to reassessment. And then hopefully recommending adoption of the FY25 budget on May 1st. The proposed budget and presentation is available on the city's website. The full document is available for review at City Hall, in the clerk's office, in the finance department. Copies are being made available citywide in all libraries, as well as all of the recreation centers. Citizens who have questions about the budget can contact the Budget Division at 514-4006, or they can email questions to budgetofficer@suffolkva.us. With that, I will take any questions you may have at this time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Meeks. Council, questions or comments? Councilman Fawcett?
Charles, thanks a lot for the presentation. It's a pretty good amount of information here. If I could make a motion, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to do so. And my motion would be to direct the city manager to amend or to look or to allow for a 2-cent reduction in the current mill rate. So I'd like to make that motion if I could.
Got a motion from Councilman Fawcett, Vice Mayor Ward.
Second.
Second from Vice Mayor Ward. Do we have any discussion of the motion or discussion of the presentation before we vote on the motion? Okay, if there's no discussion of the motion, before we vote, I'd just like to offer a few comments. Councilman Fawcett, thanks for bringing that forward at this time. I believe that the numbers that Mr. Meeks has presented and the budget that the manager has presented for us to consider for consideration do offer an opportunity for some tax relief for our citizens in the form of a 2-cent reduction in our mill rate or real estate rate. Looking at the presentation itself, I mean, we are, I think impressive is a good term. We are in a very enviable position when you look at income, which has put us in a position to make some substantial investments, not only in our city and our infrastructure through the CIP project, but also importantly, investments in our personnel. It appears that at a 4% increase, it's probably not only in line with their neighboring cities, but a little bit more than our neighboring cities. I think a lot of neighboring cities are in the 3 to 3.5 range. I think I saw a 2 the other day, but I have no problem with it. We have very well qualified and dedicated staff, and we need to be ahead of the game to ensure that we can retain that staff. And fortunately, we are fiscally in a position to where we can do that. We have $21.3 million worth of increased revenue, and then we have the luxury of transferring about $7.5 million from our funds to go to the other expenses within the budget. When I look at our fiscal policy, we not only, I mean, Mr. Meeks referred to us satisfying our fiscal policies. We have more than satisfied them in all three categories. We've moved those to numbers that improve our position in regards to our fiscal policy. I think there's a couple of items there that we maybe underestimated. I know we budgeted for about $2 million income on investments based on the atmosphere and what I'm hearing, and probably lack of probability of the feds reducing rates as they had anticipated last year. I think this figure is going to come in considerably higher, which is okay. You know, we need to be conservative in our budgeting because further down the road, you know, it may not be what it is. The the increase in dollars to our local service partners. We have so many people doing so many things for our city from a volunteer standpoint, serving our citizens. You know, an additional $274,000 increase is well warranted, as well as the $850,000 for our emergency shelter operations, which I'm excited, you know, that they're coming online to help with that need. Also, I do have a question concerning ERUs in regards to the water, and I think it said that we weren't anticipating any additional ERUs coming on. Is that, and I don't entirely understand that. Maybe that's a question for somebody else.
I think Paul and I can address that, but we've estimated those ERUs to remain consistent at 550 ERUs during the next coming year. They've experienced that around that number this past year. It looks like there's on the same pace this year. So when you project ahead, when they say there's no increase in the number of ERUs that we model at, but there is 550 that we model at.
Okay, so is it true that even though we may have more users, they result in less usage sometimes?
This is new connections.
New connections. So-
ERUs, new connections.
So we're not anticipating any new connections? Or
Yes, 550.
550, okay. so
Equivalent residential
That's increasing
units.
it by an
ERUs
additional
are
550.
the
Is it-
equivalent residential
okay,
units.
Which is the same, so the growth anticipated is the same growth we had last year?
Yes,
Now I got it. Okay, I'm a slow learner, but that's it. Okay, so the 550 ERUs is based on the 550 last year.
in the year
We're still
before.
having growth, but it's not going to exceed last year.
Yes.
Okay, that's probably a pretty optimistic number, but I like that. The step increase for our police officers, I mean, that's awesome. You know, we need to be there. They need to know what they're getting. I only would say I fully support Councilman Fawcett's motion. I think it's warranted, and I think our citizens deserve, you know, the relief that we can pass along to them, and we will be reviewing that amended budget when we come back at our next meeting for approval. Council, any other questions or comments? We got a motion on the floor from Councilman Fawcett to direct the city manager to amend the budget, taking into consideration a 2-cent reduction in the mill rate. Councilman Rector?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Meek. You know, it seems like you guys finished with one budget cycle, and before you can even get this thing on the shelf, it's time to start working on the next one. And I appreciate all the hard work that everybody in the city, from your office on down, puts into making this happen for us. Just, Brooke, I'm in support of the motion, but I just wondered if the 2-cent drop in the mill rate, can you just sort of briefly outline what that does and where it fits into the budget and whatnot, just so we have a full understanding of its impact?
So 1 cent on the real estate tax rate is about $1.5 million. So we'd be looking at reducing expenditures a little over $3 million. We're looking for new revenue. And so that's something the manager and I and staff will have to take a look at and bring back a proposal for you.
Okay, any other questions or comments before we call for the vote? Hearing none, council members prepare to vote. Please cast your vote. Madam Clerk, please record the vote.
The motion is approved by a vote of 8-0.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Meeks. Our next item is in regards to the Cypress Borough, John F. Kennedy Precinct, and White Marsh Precinct. Mr. Manager.
Yes, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, at your July 19th, 2023 City Council meeting, a motion was made to direct myself to bring back a report from Register to amend the boundaries of the city voting precincts to place all residents of Lake Kennedy neighborhood into the John F. Kennedy Precinct, effective after the November 2023 general election. We have taken that look, and at this time, Deputy City Manager Kevin Hughes will provide that staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, as the manager outlined, we'll walk you through some information and some recommendations. So on the screen before you is the map that was approved in 2022 that created our new boroughs and precincts following the census. We're going to zoom in into the Cypress Borough, and then specifically outlined in purple and yellow, the JFK precinct, as well as the White Marsh precinct. Currently, JFK votes at JFK Middle School on East Washington Street, and the White Marsh precinct votes down at New First Baptist Church on Hosier Road. Then zooming in just a touch further, the interest was really related to the Lake Kennedy neighborhood. If you follow that kind of pink line on the southern portion of the screen there, you can see where the large red circle is. It cuts through the Lake Kennedy neighborhood and continues in a southern direction. That line that was put in place follows a significant Dominion transmission line, and so that was one of the landmarks to follow for the precinct and the boundary creation. So the request was, can we look at bringing that line in a different direction so the Lake Kennedy neighborhood can all vote at JFK versus splitting it, where the southern section currently will vote at White Marsh and the northern section will vote at JFK. And so you'll see a smaller red circle. And so when we looked at that, we knew as we shifted that line or looked at other boundaries that would assist in that task, we knew we'd also impact Eagle Landing, where Suffolk Redevelopment Housing has updated that housing project as well. And so just to preview, what we wanted to look at is some of those other cuts or designations you can see through the Great Dismal Swamp. And so we luckily had some other boundaries to look at, and so we were able to identify some of the trails that go into the Great Dismal Swamp as a potential location for a new boundary. So looking at the numbers, and I'll walk this slide through you here. At the very top is the current registered voters. One at JFK, you can see a little over 2,000 voters, 2,651 to be exact, and White Marsh at 1,164 voters. So what was highlighted in that map that we just looked at a second ago is 371 voters. That encompassed the Lake Kennedy neighborhood that was split, and then that Eagle Landing neighborhood as well. And so if we were to modify and bring that line further down to one of the trails into the swamp and bring both of those neighborhoods in, that would impact 371 voters. And so what you would have at JFK, the new number would be 3,022, and then White Marsh would be 793. And so that is an acceptable number. You've got to be over 500 in order to keep a precinct whole. And so those numbers do work if we were to modify and change the boundary. I'll go back for a second. What we're looking at of interest here would be using the Jericho ditch in the Great Dismal Swamp and running it out to the city of Chesapeake. And so both those new neighborhoods would come into the JFK precinct. So on your regular session, item number 19 is a motion, if you so choose, that we would hold a public hearing on May 15th to amend Chapter 26-2C, Code of the City of Suffolk, Virginia, precincts and boundaries in boroughs, Cypress Borough, JFK Precinct, and White Marsh Precinct. I can answer any questions if you have any.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hughes. Council, questions or comments? Councilman Bennett?
Thank you, Kevin, for all the work that you all have put into that. It's been a long time trying to come up to make those numbers work. It's going to mean a lot that the people were changing that because they did not have a lot of them did not have transportation to go out to the present location, New First Baptist on Hosier Road. And a lot of them couldn't get there to vote. So this put it back in the bus line where people can get there, plus it's putting the people back, not splitting the neighborhood up like it were before, and putting them back together so they would go and vote. We lost a lot of people that had interest in voting last time because they didn't have transportation and being able to get out there, so they just didn't even vote. So I do appreciate the report, and I'm looking forward to the motion in our regular session this afternoon for approval. Thank you.
I failed to thank both ITGIS and the Office of the Registrar on putting together this information.
Council, any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hughes. That concludes our work session. We do have a need for a closed session this evening. Madam Clerk, will you please read the motion for consideration?
Item number 1, pursuant to Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711, A8 and A1, consultation with legal counsel employed by a public body requiring specific legal advice. specific legal matters requiring this legal advice of such counsel, and the discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for appointment, and the assignment, appointment, and performance of specific public officers or appointees of the city, specifically the appointments as shown on the attached list for vacancies or term expirations for the Community Policy and Management Team, the Early Childhood Development Commission, the Fine Arts Commission, the Human Services Advisory Board, the Local Board of Building Code Appeals, the Sister Cities Commission, the Suffolk Redevelopment and Housing Authority, the Tidewater Youth Services Commission, the Western Tidewater Community Services Board, and specifically the performance and salaries of the city manager, the city attorney, the city clerk, and the city assessor.
Council, a motion has been presented for consideration. Councilman Rector,
So moved.
got a motion for approval from Councilman Rector. Councilperson Butler Barlow,
Second?
second from Councilmember Butler Barlow. Is there any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, council members prepare to vote. Please cast your vote. Madam Clerk, please record the vote.
The motion is approved by a vote of 8-0.
This meeting stands adjourned, and we will reconvene at 6 p.m.